Jupiter at Night is presented before a live internet audience.
Hello everyone and welcome to Jupiter at Night for July 15th, 2010. My name is Chris.
And my name is the highly caffeinated Jeremy.
Welcome to this edition of Jupiter at Night. We are Monday through Thursday. So with that said, we have two goals with tonight's episode. One, we're going to tell you what you can look forward to on the weekend in terms of movies. And then also the biggest gadget this weekend, unquestionably, is going to be the Droid X. And we got a little time with that today, so we're going to talk about that.
But first, the movies.
All
Because
right.
that's what you guys are all going to do when you're not watching our pretty faces on
Theoretically,
the internet, right?
or watching our other shows, I suppose.
Well, you could do that, I guess. The first one that's coming up this weekend, I'm going to start with the one I'm not so excited about.
All
This
right,
is
that's
the
fair.
Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Okay. Now
why
are you not so excited about that? Because
It's
I've
a
also
kids
heard that.
movie.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
this is basically going to be an action popcorn film. Let me get the trailer.
And I can actually kind of see it just in their artwork there, really. I can kind of see that it's not really our target audience.
I
So
think that this
probably not a lot of people in our audience are going to watch that one. So we could just, do you think we should just skip this one?
Well, I kind of wanted to, but I do have a funny story to tell.
Okay.
The guy doing the apprentice part, Jay Baruchel.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's funny. I just get to name drop a little bit. My brother used to be a professional makeup artist down in Hollywood for a few years, and he
Cool.
did a project with Jay Baruchel and Seth Rogen.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You know, those guys are like this, and it was called Jay and Seth versus the Apocalypse. The funny part of the story is that the script was originally written to be this really dramatic end of the world thing, and it was like this big movement piece. They wanted to show that they had some acting chops, but you get those two guys alone in a room together, they just went completely off script. Started
Oh, yeah,
just
yeah.
improvising all over the place, and they turned it into this dark comedy thing. And so the guys shooting the film just scrapped the whole project because it was going to be this like 8-minute short. It was very dramatic, very dark,
okay,
very.
yeah. But that's not what they got. They had a lot of
No.
fun. So,
So they just scrapped the project and they said they'll come back to it later.
That's cool.
But those two guys are really busy.
and they're behind this new movie?
Jay Baruchel is playing
Okay.
one of the lead roles in it.
Gotcha.
You know, that kind of goofy guy. He was in. What was it? She's Too Good for You or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, She's Out of Your League. That was
Mhm.
what it was called. He played in Knocked Up. He was Seth Rogen's character's friend.
Okay.
So
Okay.
he's just that goofy, geeky
Well, that's
guy.
cool. So that might,
Check out that Jay and Seth versus the Apocalypse, though. All they've got up right now is a trailer.
It's very funny, though.
It came out in 2006. The trailer did, and it said coming soon ever since.
Let's throw a link to it in the show notes.
I will.
That
yeah.
seems like a fun one for
I'll
people
do
to
that.
watch on the weekend. All right, now the next one that I am actually kind of looking forward to this
Me too.
weekend. And this is one that I've heard probably, pretty much fairly decent buzz, but it's called Inception. And I'm sure most of you out there have heard of the movie now. This is one of these movies that I've heard the buzz, and either because of the viral marketing efforts of the company or whatever it is, I actually don't really even have a very clear picture of what the actual plot line of the movie is. I know that it's supposedly, for different reasons, supposed to be a great movie. It's got this like this buzz that it's this maybe ultimate character piece for Leonardo DiCaprio. All
And
this
this is
kind
also
of stuff.
made by Christopher Nolan, who's been making hit after
Right,
hit with
right.
the Batman films.
But I actually don't know what the movie's about.
The movie, a lot of people don't, and that's one of the reasons that some of the critics out there are actually already coming out and saying this is probably going to be a big old flop. The movie had a budget of $200 million to make this
Right.
movie, so it's a really big budget, blockbuster movie, but if it doesn't make that back, technically it's a flop. Now, a lot of people are saying that because of Christopher Nolan's success with Batman, even if it's a flop, they'll just kind of let it slide.
The other buzz I have heard about the movie is that the visual effects are what is going to be considered completely indiscernible from reality.
Well, that's the whole idea. The actual plot line of the movie is that these guys are dream thieves.
Right. Okay.
They find a way to get into your subconscious through your dreams and then steal information from inside your head. So most of the
That's a concept.
movie takes place inside this dream world where you can't really tell reality from fiction.
Oh, okay.
And sometimes you can't even really tell when you're dreaming.
That seems like this could run the risk of being a tedious watch.
It could, and a lot of the reviews are also saying that it might be too smart for the average moviegoer.
For your average bear.
Yep. So one of the things that I found really interesting, though, is there's a couple guys out there saying that this could be the next Blade Runner, which was also panned when it hit the theaters. it was a major financial flop when it hit the theaters.
Yeah.
But several years later, it became this cult classic in the sci-fi genre where everybody goes back and everybody knows Blade Runner now.
Absolutely, yeah.
But at the time, it was this horrible movie that nobody wanted to see and nobody watched.
So I guess this is one of those I'm going to try to go see this weekend. Maybe if we can both get a chance to see it, we'll give a review on Monday.
We will try, but no promises.
All right.
But I do want to see this movie.
Yeah.
So, somebody in the chat room mentioned that it was very similar to an anime called Paprika. I've seen that mentioned a number of times, and everybody seems to agree.
Never seen it.
Not a personal fan of anime, so.
Neither am I. I know. I guess I've heard good things, but. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the Droid X.
Let's do it. Now this is mostly you because you actually got your hands on a model.
I
today.
did. I don't have it anymore. I had to give it back before the show. But I am a Droid original owner. I have the Droid that came out like back in around the December time.
Droid.
Just the Droid. So this is sort of like the ultimate successor to that, and it's definitely got some of the same design concepts behind it, but it's ultimately a very different phone. It is visually very impressive. It's a huge phone. It's very thin, very sleek.
So about an inch longer than the original Droid, isn't it?
Yeah, it's I don't know the exact dimensions, but it's much longer and much wider than the original Droid.
But also
much thinner
because they got rid of the physical keyboard.
And because it is thinner like that, I did the pocket test, Droid and Droid. It actually was much more comfortable in my pocket than I expected. It fit a lot better.
Even though it's so long.
It was a little uncomfortable. And that is definitely a knock. I thought I might like the additional screen real estate, but in practicality, on the Droid X, the screen size is 4.3 inches, but the actual resolution of that display is the same as the original Droid.
So it's just stretched a little bit?
Well, its aspect ratio is correct. It's just larger. So, like if you go to jupiterbroadcasting.com on device side by side, which is exactly what I did, the exact same amount of information is able to fit on both screens. It is larger on the Droid X and much more easier to read because of it. But the same amount of content is still available to you, and if you're comfortable with that, you are able to get that in a smaller device. Also, in my personal opinion, the blacks on the original Droid were darker.
Do you think that's because the screen is supposed to be better under highlight conditions?
I guess the original Droid is considered to have a very good screen. That's like one of the things it's known for. So it might just be that I'm comparing it to something that's considered to have, for its generation, a good screen.
Okay.
I don't think it holds up. I don't think any of them hold up to like the iPhone 4 and some of the super OLED screens or whatever they are that's going to be in some of the newer devices. But either way, though, it's still actually a pretty good screen. Now, it felt like a little bit of a last generation screen.
I want to talk a little bit more about the case because you told me that despite being thinner, it has like a lump on one side on the back.
It has a curvature, yeah. And it's sort of like...
there's a picture of it right there. No.
All right. If you think of it...
I don't want to reach way across the table and show you, but it's right there.
You can't really see, but if you're watching the video version, about where your thumb would be holding the phone, there's a slight... it bends out a little bit. Otherwise, it's extremely thin, but then it curves out a little bit.
Now, when you first mentioned to me, I was a little put off by that because it seems really... There it is. It seems really irregular and not something that you'd want. But you were saying that this actually enables you to more comfortably hold the phone?
Yeah, well, it gives you a good grip position. It gives you a good spot to rest your fingers against, which is nice.
Yeah.
But the other thing is also gives you like a really quick orientation in your pocket. You put your hand in your pocket, you immediately can tell which way the phone's facing. Yeah. Almost an impossibility on the iPhone and still a difficult task on a lot of phones because they kind of feel, when you're just fumbling around in your pocket, they kind of feel the same
way no matter which side you got.
Clearly, distinctually, I could tell where the Droid was. Yeah. And then it was actually a comfortable... The thinness was because it was so thin, but you held it so wide, you almost needed your finger to go somewhere, and it gave you the perfect spot without having to put your finger on the camera lens.
Kind of slide right up next to the bump.
Right, because if that wasn't there, you'd probably be resting your finger right on the camera, getting your greases all over it. So that was... I actually liked that design spot. It didn't raise it as much as I thought it might on the table, but...
so it's like not tilted up or anything.
Right. Performance-wise, the Droid X ran quite well. Surprisingly for me, it ran about, I'd say, slightly faster than my stock Droid that's been overclocked with, and it has Froyo on it. So this is running this Droid X runs one older version,
2.1, right? Yeah.
Right? And my Droid is 2.2. It's a custom ROM. But the performance-wise, they felt about on par. But what I believe that means is when Froyo becomes available for the Droid X, then it's really going to leapfrog because you're going to get a 2 to 6x performance increase.
Yeah, 2 to 6 times.
So you put that on a device that already feels about as fast as what I've been able to achieve after a lot of work, then that's probably going to be snappy.
Yeah.
I don't know yet, because one of the areas that's kind of a gray area with the Droid X is there's been some hubbub about the possibility that it's unmoddable. With the things like with the phones like the Nexus 1 and the original Droid, there's a very vibrant ROM community that actually creates custom distributions of Android that have, like, maybe they run the processor a little faster, maybe they come with different applications, things like that, and that's how I'm able to get an operating system on my phone that actually hasn't officially been released by the manufacturer yet.
Through the community.
And
I find that awesome.
It is awesome. And one of the concerns is with the Droid X is there might be a security architecture in place that prevents this type of modding, which has been a significant area for the Android community. And with such an amazing piece of hardware, it would be awesome.
Android is based on Linux, and a lot of Linux users are way into the customization and being able to tinker with their software. So, yeah, I can see that being a real big problem. But isn't it based on a bootloader that was just recently hacked, though? Isn't that?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing that I think a lot of people that are reading the headlines are kind of missing. And it's not... I'm not putting the blame on the readers because I think a lot of the media, a lot of the mainstream tech is getting it wrong. It's based on what we believe. This is all kind of early information, but I say we, I'm not involved at all, but what the Android community believes, and
no,
through my reading.
Because you said you are, and it's on the internet.
Well, I've been involved in some of the forums, so I've been in some of the conversations, but what's believed is that the Droid X ships with the Motorola Milestone's bootloader. The Milestone has been considered a little bit harder to hack than the original Droid. That bootloader is what's believed to be on the Droid X. Would make sense because they're all Motorola product family lines. They just recently were able to hack the Milestone. So if that's...
How long has that been out?
I'm not sure. It's been probably...
A couple months at least.
Yeah.
So obviously more difficult.
More difficult. Now what's gotten people a little more alarmed is there's a talk of what's called an eFuse. And this eFuse, I'll have to bring up a link over here. This eFuse is potentially what people are really scared about, permanently bricking the Droid. It actually is the ability to, on the fly, reprogram the chip like a fuse while it's in operation.
The hardware?
The actual hardware controller. So say, for example, if you wanted to immediately alter the power flow at an actual hardware level to the antenna to save battery life, you could reprogram this eFuse to trickle power to the antenna. So to physically lock it down. So not just a software request to say, hey, calm down, use less power, but an actual hardware demand. The idea being that that would be a really fine-grained control way of managing power. But what if you took that and you put that in a system that was part of an overall security architecture that involved the core fundamental hardware in the phone, like the bootloader area, the core ROMs, things like that. And now you have these eFuses in those areas, where if somebody tampered with this, you could actually have code make one of the fuses physically turn off power to a chip on the phone. That's what people are really worried about, because that technology actually exists in the Droid X. It's called the eFuse,
so they're worried about
and it's real.
They're worried about the fact that if this became a moddable architecture, that people could make malware distributions for their phones?
No, I think they're more worried about some sort of protection in place that would deactivate the device so you can't run your own operating system.
Oh, like operated by the
a
service?
Lockdown, yeah, by Motorola or your provider. My early understandings of this, from what I've read on sites like Droid-Life and Wikipedia and the forums over at Droid Forums, is this technology, this eFuse technology, is actually present in the Droid that I have, the original Droid. And it's present in the Milestone. And it's never been used to deactivate this. And the Droid, the original Droid that I have, is considered one of the more moddable Android phones on the market. but it actually has this eFuse technology in it. A lot of devices do now. It is kind of a scary technology on its own.
But
it's interesting.
Just to make sure that I understand the point here, the alarmists about this eFuse are basically seeing it as a form of Big Brother kill switch.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're worried so that if they hack their phones, their new Droid X, that somebody at Motorola or AT&T or whoever is their service provider could say, you don't have a real version, turn it off.
Right.
At the hardware level.
Right. Now here is my early understandings, and one of the nice things about Jupiter at Night is if we get this wrong,
we'll just come back next week and tell you.
We'll come back normally tomorrow or the next episode, and we'll immediately correct it if the community tells we got it wrong. So that's one thing to keep in mind, because this all is developing today. But my understanding as this progresses is that the hardware where this eFuse lives, where this software, this whole security architecture lives, this M-Shield is what it's called. This M-Shield security architecture lives. It is not capable of communicating at the operating system level, if I'm understanding correctly. At least not normally. Because the idea would be if it could communicate with the operating system level, an attacker would only have to compromise the operating system to get control of the physical security level, right?
Okay.
So I believe that that would mean that Motorola wouldn't be able to send a signal over the wire through the operating system to the chip, because they can't communicate.
So then why does it? So what does communicate with it then? I don't
know. My understanding would be the pre-existing programming in place. So whatever the ROM controllers do for power management or whatever it needs to do.
So that means if they roll out like a new distribution that has to flash your ROM.
I don't know. Maybe at that point there's some way they can access and write. I don't understand that aspect of it. But maybe if people do, I'd love to know in the comments, or if you know where I can find out how they could somehow update this subsystem.
This whole thing is neat, but a little scary, because I mean, the idea of a reprogrammable circuit on a piece of hardware that can be reprogrammed on the fly is basically a brain.
Yeah.
I mean, that's neurons.
Yeah, because you're turning hardware into software in a way, because it's an on-the-fly programmable chip.
Cool,
but freaky.
Because that means we're only a few short steps away from the robot apocalypse.
If the machines can program themselves.
And these are all running Android, a Google product.
Oh my gosh. Which is already the Skynet infrastructure. You know, actually, before we wrap up tonight, speaking of Google had their earnings report come out today.
Yes.
And along with
the earnings reports are kind of what?
Along with they make great money and things like that, but
oh yeah, I've already got it.
The sad thing came out that that little Pac-Man Google logo that was
You call this sad? I think it's very amusing.
It's fundamentally sad. Is what it is.
On the very large scale, kind of sad.
Can I
say it?
Yeah, go ahead.
The human race, that means every single last person on this planet, aggregated together, spent 547 days playing Google Pac-Man.
547 days?
Days.
Or was it years?
Was it years?
Take a look at the thing there, but either way, it is years.
It's years.
500.
Oh my God.
See, you see why it's depressing now?
547.
Now do you see why it bothers me?
Now it bothers me.
Imagine what the human race could accomplish in 547 years, and we wasted it on Pac-Man. We wasted it on Pac-Man.
You know, there's an old saying that says, time enjoyed is not time wasted. There are some times that I just cannot agree with that statement, because 547 years.
We should be at warp and have transporters and have already fought the Borg and all those kinds of things.
I'm done. I'm no longer part of the human race. I'm done. I'm seceding from the nation.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be a part of that.
You know, it's a kind of a freaky.
I spent 3 hours.
What about a freaky metric? If we took our viewer base and times it by all of our show lengths, how many years we've wasted. So maybe we should go and wrap up this episode of Jupiter at Night.
We don't want to go down that path.
So
we're holding back human evolution, dude.
I know it. So we're going to move on. I think we're going to try the 9 o'clock time slot next week.
It seemed to work.
It seems to be working for you guys. But if to get the final word on that, go to facebook.com/Jupiter Broadcasting.
And if you have any feedback to share with us on our show, you guys, we have a lively live community. So watch for those and join us live. Yeah. But also, if you're watching this recorded, you can either leave a comment on the YouTube videos or join us over on JupiterColony.com. That is our forum. on the internet.
That's a good place to go. And there's a section there just for Jupiter at Nite.
There is.
And we love hearing your feedback because one of the things we're going to be focusing on hopefully next week is integrating more and more of your comments and your
I think
ideas.
we're even going to try a set-aside part of one of our episodes next week to do a Google Buzz kind of semi-tutorial so we can teach you guys how to follow us, how we
That's a
can
good
follow
idea.
you so you can share stories
good
with
idea.
us
I like it.
that might make it on the show, make it a really real community effort.
Okay. All right, everyone. Well, have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here Monday night.